Holy Fraggle Rock, it is Monday, which means it's time for Monday Club! Welcome to the club, guys. Today we have an amazing special guest. We're going to be talking to Mr. Nate Staniforth, international superstar. We're also going to be talking about how dogs are stupid, but it's fun to have pure magic in your life. Hurricanes, prize fights. We're going to tell some of the best damn stories you've ever heard, and of course this week's teachable moment. Stick around.
It's Monday!
Monday! Cheers, my friend!
Cheers.
How are you guys doing?
I'm doing wonderful.
Yeah, I'm great.
Pete.
Thanks for having me on.
Oh my
Ladies
God.
and gentlemen of Monday Club, we have a very special and honored guest today.
We sure do. May I introduce international superstar Nate Staniforth, who, by the way, has already said more on this podcast than any other podcast that he's ever been on. So,
Yeah, I have the distinction of being the worst guest on Brian Brushwood's BB Live Club because it was a 90-minute recording, video recording, and I didn't say a single word. And that wouldn't have been a big deal if it was an audio podcast because people just forget about me. But it was video, and like if you look at the comments, it was like, "Who is that guy sitting at the end of the table? Do you know him? This is weird."
Were you just staring at the wall?
I sort of clutched. I didn't know what to talk about, so I just thought.
Where can we get that
so much
footage?
better, man.
That's what I want to know. Brian, email us that footage.
I can just imagine 90 minutes of Nate just like staring off at the camera.
Yeah, it's more awkward than you imagine.
Oh man, well I'm glad
God.
you said already a few words. Now we can just mute Nate for the rest of the podcast. Is that right, Gus?
Yeah, my work here is done. Good luck, you guys.
One take, Nate. One take. Good job, man.
Bam.
Well, hey, gentlemen, cheers. Cheers to it being Monday, and cheers to dogs being stupid.
I'll cheers to that. Gus, you found this on Reddit, your favorite Cheers of the Week finding place.
It really is my favorite Cheers of the Week finding place. So
I didn't get this the first time.
Yeah, I know.
I
it's
looked
funny
at it
because I showed this video to both Nate and Pete, and the first time they watched it, they both just looked at me the same way I think the dog felt in this video. And so let me set this video up. So here's what's going on. There is a French doors with two glass panes in the doors, and those glass panes have been removed. So the two humans close the door from the inside, and then they walk outside of the door through the glass panes. But the dog, who has been trained from birth that walls are solid, does not understand the voodoo magic that is going on that allows them to pass through this door. And so it just starts freaking out like it's locked inside, even though there's no glass there. Now, the video is funny because dogs are stupid. But the more important thing is the reason why I think this video is so great is because it highlights my favorite thing in magic. And it's not just in magic, it's my favorite thing in life. I talk about this with CJ Johnson a lot, and this moment is one of those moments that you can't ever get back. And you guys know what I'm talking about. It's the kind of moment where when you, like if you're walking up steps and you think there's an extra step and you put your foot where a step would be and then you like stumble, like you can't get that moment back. You can't recreate that moment. That moment has to be completely organic. And I think that's exactly what this dog is experiencing. It has no idea why these humans are able to pass through what it knows is solid. So like so it's hilarious, and it reminded me of just pure on magic, like real actual magic to this dog. Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. And what I love about that analogy is it sort of highlights what the magician's job is, right? Because there's a huge difference between confusion, which is what the dog is experiencing, and that experience of like wonder and awe and mystery, you know? Because the dog doesn't know that something impossible happens. The dog is just sort of baffled by the whole thing.
Ladies and gentlemen, Nate Staniforth. That's like, that's
that was like
right.
40 or 45 words there, guys. So
For those of you keeping track.
Yeah, and you can see the dog is super confused. He goes back and forth going like, wait a second, what just happened here? And then he looks up at the owner and just kind of like barks because he's in this weird headspace.
Yeah, and I think, Nate, you said it exactly right, man. In setting up a magic trick, when you perform a trick for somebody, I think that same experience is happening with a human as it is with that dog. Like, my favorite shows, we've talked about this on the show before, but my favorite shows are shows for engineers because their brains are puzzle makers, right? Their brains know how things work. And so if you can tweak it just a tiny bit where it makes their brain skip a step, then you have those are the people who are the hardest to fool, but when you fool them, they're like full-on convert believers in magic, you know? It's like the best audience for you.
Right. If you want a great show, give me a room of doctors and lawyers and engineers any day, because once you get them to turn, it's the biggest response.
Right, and they start off with such a chip on their shoulder because they know that they're so smart, right? Like this dog, it knows how to get in and out of doors, and all of a sudden, like you've just totally screwed with its worldview, and it has no idea what to do except for freak out and have them open the door again.
That's why it bugs me when people come up to me after the show and they're like, "Man, if I was smarter, I would totally know how you do that." Or I'm so stupid, you got me on all the tricks, you know? And it's like, no, the whole reason why you are actually fooled is because you are an intelligent human being.
Right. The less intelligent you are, the less it is fooling for you. And I know this for a fact because I have an 8-year-old. And when I do a magic trick for him, he usually explains it away in a way that is absolutely 8 years old, right? So I'll do something, it'll be like, I don't know, maybe you made the deck actually disappear, and then when you reached in, only the card was left. It's like, well,
maybe
sure.
Magic actually happened.
Right. But then if he explains it like that, it's no longer entertaining to him. He's like, well, I mean, maybe that's what happened. But you know, if I really did what you just said, I would be a lot more famous in the magic world, because that would be like truly impressive.
So guys, let's raise a glass to the dog, the confusing dog that doesn't know when glass is there and when it isn't. Cheers.
Cheers.
First up to Nate. What are you drinking today, sir?
Man, I've got low sodium V8 juice.
In true Monday Club fashion.
But in my coffee cup, it's straight gin. So,
So you're drinking a deconstructed Bloody Mary. You're on the show.
Call it what you will, guys.
So you put a little bit of V8 in one side of your mouth, then a little bit of gin, and then you just kind of go shake it up in your head and then swallow.
All right. Pete, what are you drinking?
I found this in my store this week. Sam Adams Oktoberfest. It means fall is here. I love Oktoberfest beers. They're probably my favorite style of beer. Delicious. I'll be drinking this until it turns to Winterfest. Winter lager.
All right.
Yeah.
Nice. I agree with you 100% on the Oktoberfest beers. Those are really, really good. And mostly it's the world's sigh of relief that is no longer 112 degrees outside. That's pretty much what it is.
Pete, you taught me about Oktoberfest beers. I was deeply skeptical, and we were at a conference somewhere out east, and you're like, no, just try it. And yeah, you were not wrong about that.
Well, thank you. I have a good taste palate for beer, I think.
Nice. Well, in true Monday Club fashion, I totally forgot to go and get a special drink for today. So
Capri Sun.
Yeah, no, I am. Our refrigerator is completely devoid of groceries and mixers. So today I am drinking just straight tequila. Just straight tequila. Yeah, there's no mixers, there's no chasers. It is just a giant glass full of silver tequila. And I apologize later for anything that I say on this show.
Gus, I think this is going to go very well for you.
Well, sure, I won't remember it, but you tell me later, buddy.
We'll take samples of Gus in the beginning, middle, and end of the podcast and see how the speech is forming in his.
Oh my god! Well, when we get to the "I love you" mans, you just cut me off. Just cut my recording.
We'll cut you off after 10.
Thanks, man.
You're welcome. Well, thank you guys so much for listening. We appreciate it. So if you're listening because Nate's on, thank you for joining us. Tell a friend about it. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes. Give us a little love and give us a little rating up there. And tell a friend about what we're doing here. We want to grow the club, and you can always communicate with us. MondayClubPodcast.com. All the social media is up there. And also, if you want to email us, MondayClubPodcast@gmail.com. So, yeah. Welcome to the club.
All right, guys. So, Nate, we have so much that we want to talk to you about. Before we get into that, I think there's something important that we need to just go ahead and get out of the way. And it affects us no matter where we live in this country. So there was a little bit of a huge hurricane and natural disaster that happened here in the Texas area, specifically in the Houston region. And we just want to make sure that we recognize that and give a huge, huge little PSA for the flood victims. We are thinking about you. We have set up a couple of charities to try to help with the relief of that. And I just want to say out loud that not only is this a terrible, terrible natural disaster, it's the worst flooding that's happened in 500 years or more in this country. It's also something that when the cameras turn off and when all of the reporters go away because there's something else happening, that these people are still going to need your help. So, please don't forget about those flood victims in Houston. There's a lot of magician friends that we all have, and a lot of other friends and family that we have in Houston that need your help.
Yeah, definitely. Make sure you're giving to that Red Cross out there. You tweeted something out about 9009 something to the Red Cross, and I was like, share, retweet, totally donated $10. So thanks for that.
Cool. Yeah, totally.
Here's, I think, the thing to look out for. My town got hit with a very bad flood in 2008, and for about a week we had the whole world's, the whole country's attention, and there was this outpouring of support and relief. And then something else happened, and the story moved on. But everybody here was still out of homes, out of their businesses. The town was just as, damaged in the future, as it was, the week it happened. And so I don't know exactly how that looks for Houston, but my worry is that something else will come up and the story will go elsewhere, and those people will still need help next week and next month and 6 months from now. And I think this is a long, slow process.
Yeah, it's going to take years for Houston to recover. I mean, the property damage and people's homes and everything it was insane.
Yeah, 51.88 inches of rain in certain areas. That's insane. There's swimming pools out there that don't have that much water.
We don't get that much rain in a year in Maine. That's insane.
Right.
It's crazy.
Right. And Houston is shaped topographically like a giant cereal bowl, so that doesn't help anybody. Anyway, I think what Nate said is absolutely true. We want to try to do our part on that as well, is to just make sure that those people know that when the cameras turn off, we'll still be thinking about you and trying to do things to try to help the city. What is Houston, like the 6th most populated city in the United States? There's millions and millions of businesses and families that live there, and so just Monday Club cheers to you guys who are having a really, really rough time out there, and we got you, and we'll continue to do things to try to help you guys out.
On a lighter note of this, I got taken believing a fake picture was real. There was a picture going around Facebook of the Houston airport flooded, and it showed airplanes underwater, and apparently that was faked.
Yeah, I saw that too, and like everything, as soon as you see something unbelievable, you want to retweet it, and I'm glad I didn't, because I saw that same picture, and I was like, oh my god, airplanes underwater, that's insane, and then very shortly after I found out that it was a fake picture. So
Yeah, my wife is like, I can't believe you believed that. You're one of the most skeptical people ever. But after looking at pictures of highways underwater and skyscrapers or buildings like halfway up their side of their building filled with water, you see that for like a day straight, and then all of a sudden you see airplanes underwater. You're like, yeah, that's probably true.
Right. It wasn't implausible. Yeah.
Right. Well, it's not implausible. Had they been in different parts of the city, that could have happened. Switching over back to a lighter note, I think the two of my favorite things that I've seen that were just you're dealing with a tragedy. People are dying. People are losing property and stuff like that. But for those people who are stuck there, I think the only thing to do is to sit tight, try to keep yourself safe, and to do whatever you can to kind of smile a little bit in the face of all that tragedy. And so I saw one picture that was the new Aquaman from the Justice League movies was walking around in the floodwaters. I thought that was funny. And
Like the actor, that guy.
Well, no, somebody photoshopped him in there, but it was really it was clever. It was funny. And then the other one that was going around that made me laugh was some dude just went out in the middle of the rain with his house flooding and in a wife beater and some shorts and brought a toilet plunger and was like trying to plunge the water down in the thing. It's like, what are you gonna do, man? You've lost all your stuff. Let's try to have a good time and keep your heads about you.
Humor is key in times of crisis.
I think so. On that note, Nate, what do you got going, man?
Yeah, let's segue into.
Thanks for that setup. Yeah.
No, okay. So let me do a much better job segueing this for Nate. Okay, so first of all, if you don't know Nate Staniforth, hit pause right now and just Google him. He's an international superstar. He was part of the boy band Magic crew that toured all over the country. He is a magician's magician. Huh?
World.
All over the world. That's what I meant to say.
It was more of a man band too, Gus, but I'll...
I don't know. You guys are all very, very youngish looking, attractive boy band material guys. And as far as in the world of magic, Nate is a creator, and just cannot stress it enough. For magicians, for our group of friends that know Nate, we all respect each other a lot. But I think we all agree that Nate's love of magic is just infectious. So, ladies and gentlemen, I give you Mr. Nate Staniforth.
Thank you.
That deserves some applause. That was amazing.
That's my alarm in the morning too. Just people cheering.
That's a great idea.
That's pretty good. All right, Nate. So first of all, do you want to tell us a little bit about the boy band of magic, as I call it? What was that about?
I mean, there were. I think the idea was to see if we could invent magic that required more than one magician working at a time. Because, I guess Siegfried and Roy did that a little bit, but there were four of us, and just from an artistic perspective, the challenge was to invent pieces that couldn't be done with just one magician, or couldn't be done with just two magicians. Like, what if you've got four guys on stage, what can you do that you can't do otherwise? And so it was, just as a creator, it was fun having new problems to solve, because we all know how to solve the problem of one magician on stage. What are you going to do to blow people away? But it's like we got to sort of start that whole process again as a team, and it was a good time. It was, and I'd never been to Australia before. It was a fun way to meet a country, but I think of the whole time I was there, I only had like half a day off. I was pastier and paler when I came back than I was when I went there, because it was just like 16 hours a day in a dark theater. But I loved it. I thought it was a great experience.
Dude, that's really cool. So correct me if I'm wrong, but was this out at the same time that the what was that movie? Now You See Me?
Yeah, I don't think
that whole concept was out.
Yeah, I don't remember how that worked out. I don't, they weren't connected. But it did seem like in the public imagination there was this idea going around of what would a team of magicians do. So.
Right.
Yeah.
That sounds really hard, because I've tried to think of what I do with just a partner. And every time I try to imagine that, I just it almost is impossible for me to wrap my head around it because I'm so used to planning for one.
You know, the interesting thing, it took the pressure of carrying the show away, because, you know, as a solo performer, everything's on you. But I miss that too. You know, I like that feeling of going up on stage and having nothing between me and the audience, and you're just trying to connect in whatever way you can.
That's cool, man. I have a story to tell you, Nate.
Okay.
So a friend of this show, his name is Dustin Gibson. He used to be on the board at the place that you guys do the Epic Magic Tour at
Right.
Embry-Riddle.
Right.
He told me last year that when you guys came through, he was like, listen, the Epic Magic Tour is the highlight of my time. He's like, you know, it includes Nate Standiforth, Dan Martin, and Brian Brushwood, all three superstars. But he said, and I'm quoting him, look, Brian's show is Brian's show. It hasn't changed in a long time, and it's just tightly scripted. It's hilarious. You won't see anything like it. Dan is a loose cannon firecracker that's just going to get the crowd hype and yelling. But Nate makes you believe in magic. Like Nate is by far, if we had to pick our favorite, Nate is. It's just unbelievable seeing him do his thing. So that was his review of the Epic Magic Tour.
That's good of you to say. That's good of him to say. We should definitely send this to Dan and Brian just so they know how it feels too. But you know, that's another instance where with two other magicians, everybody has their role, right? Like Dan's job in that show is to be the firecracker. Brian's job is to keep the pacing and to sort of, you know, like his show is bulletproof. You can do it anywhere in the world and it will destroy, right? So my job is to do a few just sort of, you know, I don't know, unexplainable things and then turn it back over to them.
One of the effects that they talked about specifically was an effect that you got on stage, and this is, for those of you who don't know Nate Standiforth, I think this is quintessentially Nate, and I've only heard this secondhand, so I'm glad we get a chance to talk about it. But your patter for this trick went something like, "Hey guys, I want to show you a piece of amazing magic. Here's the thing: the first 3 minutes and 47 seconds of this piece are really boring, and I haven't figured out how to make them not boring. But if you can stick with me for the 3 minutes and 47 seconds, then afterwards, I promise you it's worth it." And again, I'm hearing this secondhand. I'm confirming it with you. But everyone was like, "What's happening for 3 minutes and 47 seconds?" And then at the end of that time, you started seriously melting their minds.
Yeah, that
like
is true.
The presentation of non-presentation. That's
yeah.
crazy. That's so.
I mean, the challenge is how do you do street magic for 600 people at a time, right? Without video screens, because I just have sort of a reaction against that. Like, how can you work with ideas more than visuals? And like I think being honest about what the audience is about to experience is a good first step. I put a lot of time into thinking about how to make those pieces astonishing, and almost none at all into how to make them entertaining. And at the end of the day, I realized just being honest with them about that was more effective than trying to, you know, create some theatrical wrapping to inject in at the end. Better just to go straight for the jugular. I
think that's very, like, honest about you. I think that's one of the reasons people love your magic, because for me, and I know for a lot of other entertainers, I go at magic a completely different way. I think that at the end of the day, people might not remember the tricks that I do so much as that they had a good time.
Right.
Whereas I think with you, people won't remember that you made them laugh hysterically or anything like that. But I think they will say, "Hey, this guy made me believe in the world that he created."
Right. I mean, so just purely from a tactical standpoint, if I'm going for entertainment, right? If that's my value that I'm bringing to the audience, suddenly I'm competing against Netflix and, you know, Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert, and I can't do that. But I can walk into any room in the world and make people believe in magic for a second. So rather than try and cover my weaknesses, I'm just playing to my strengths.
That's a good idea. I feel like I always try to work on my weaknesses and come up short all the time because they're my weaknesses.
Pete, I've seen your show, man. I don't believe that for a second.
So really what Nate is suggesting for Pete and I is that what we do for our kids show is we walk out with a bottle of tequila and some Oxbro of beer, and we say, look, I'm just going to play to my strengths, kids.
Gus, they would never forget you.
Neither would my parole officer. All right, moving on. All right, so Nate, you have a lot of other things that are going on in the world. There's some serious cool things that you have coming down the pipe. You wanna hype those for a second?
Well, so there are two things I'm excited about. I just finished this road trip across the country. I had a meeting in New York, and then 3 weeks later I had a show in Seattle. And instead of flying, I just drove. It was about 10,000 miles in my Honda CR-V and about 7 audiobooks, just driving across the country. But along the way, I did magic for people, and I interviewed some of my favorite magicians along the route. And
hey, Gus,
I'm putting it out.
Did you get an interview with Nate?
I wasn't in
Nate.
Nate.
I did. Did you?
Wait, Nate, I didn't get a call. Wait, there's no email, there's no text, there's no smoke signals. What's going on?
I was making it up as I went. It was a spontaneous adventure. Let's call it that.
So you're traveling across the country.
Yeah.
Leaving me out.
Yep. Yeah, I purposely avoided Maine. I thought, I'm in New York. I can go north or south.
Screw the northern folk.
Yeah. But so anyway, that'll come out as soon as I finish editing it, whenever that'll be. But
so you recorded all this stuff, kind of like vlog style, and
I did, yeah. I tried not to. I tried as hard as I can to not look like Casey Neistat, because I think he's great, but I just don't want to copy that. And so,
I'm trying my hardest to look like Casey Neistat. He's amazing.
Yeah, well, we'll see how successful I was at that. It's he's got a pretty good setup, doesn't he? That Gorilla Pod and the camera.
Oh, yeah. He didn't invent it, though.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. It is difficult, though, because he kind of set talking vlog for a second, he kind of set a standard for vloggers that have kind of become his thing, but it's kind of like the new, I'm going to use a big word, paradigm for vlogging, because that's where you have to step off from now if you want to push or do something as good or better than him. That you have to start there and then continue to work forward, or just do something that no one's ever thought of before.
Yeah, the problem I ran into is it's easy to buy all the gear. It's easy to say, oh, I want good videos, I'm just going to get a bunch of expensive camera equipment. Solving the storytelling problem is much, much harder, and I'm still trying to wrap my mind around that.
I don't agree with you, Nate. I have seen most of your YouTube videos that you've released that you've even shared some of your early footage with you escaping from chains in a freezing channel and stuff like that. Your stories are amazing, and I think what you don't understand is your superpower is to make people lean in to whatever it is that you're doing. Like your intensity and your just honestness lets people really kind of. I can't even think of another way to explain it, but lean in, I think, is the best way. You hook them on whatever you're talking about. So yeah, man, don't sell yourself short.
All right, I appreciate that, guys. Thank you. It's it's hard to know, because I edit all these videos and I think they're interesting, but it's hard to know how the world will receive them.
Well, take that for what you put the Gus Davis stamp of approval on it. All right.
All right.
At least
I am going to make an actual stamp, Gus. And I'm going to put it on everything.
That's guaranteed. 83% of all people in America will like what you do if Gus's stamp of approval's on it.
That's right. I also want to point out that this glass of tequila is halfway empty. So All right, so you have this new YouTube series coming out. You also have you've been working on a little project for a couple of years too, right?
Yeah.
Can you talk about that at all?
Yeah. So for the last 4 years, I've been. Oh man, I always manage to find myself in situations where I'm in so far over my head that the only possible way to get out is to just like work and work and work and work and work. So I thought this book was going to take a year tops. 4 years later, I turned it in what was it, May, and it comes out in January. So, yeah, it was a far larger undertaking than I anticipated. But
so you wrote it. I've heard about this infamous book for years now, and it's officially turned into the company that prints it, and it's actually going to be coming out.
It's done. Yeah.
So you officially wrote a book.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, I got the note that it's far enough along now that if I die, it's still coming out. There's no stuff.
Man, that's huge.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. It comes out in the U.S. in January and then everywhere else in March. So
talk about this book. What have you been doing for 4 years?
Sure. So it's a book about wonder. I mean, it's a memoir, but in the same way that all memoirs sort of use something from the author's life to talk about something that is relevant to everybody. You know, I think a magician has a very interesting or very personal relationship with wonder, right? Like you both have had that moment on stage where something happens and the audience just has this incredible sort of, visceral reaction to your work. And I love that. I love being amazed by things. And so I wrote a book from a magician's perspective about wonder and how to find it and how to, share it with other people.
Huh.
Is it a?
Can you give me a hint?
Is it autobiographical? Yeah. Is it autobiographical? Is it instructional? Is it philosophical?
I mean, sort of all of those things, I guess.
That sounds like a huge idea. It is a huge idea. That's like
that's why it took. That's why it took 4 years, Pete.
That's a big thing to eat.
It's a story. I mean, it's sort of the story of. So here's. And I don't know how much we've talked about this, but like I started touring on the college circuit when I was a senior in college. I would skip classes so I could go out on the road and do shows. And I was a terrible student, but it was a good way to learn how to be a magician. And I did that for 5 years. And then I got to this point where I was just sort of burned out and disillusioned by the whole thing. And I was seriously thinking of stopping and just like working at Starbucks or becoming a gardener or something like that. But what I did instead was I was reading this book about traditional Indian street magic. And I decided I was going to go on this trip to the other side of the world and sort of forget everything I knew about magic and try to dream it all up again. And so that's what the book's about. It's about falling in love with magic in the process of becoming a magician and losing sight of that in the grind of show business and then finding a way to recapture that.
Did you recapture it?
Yeah, Pete.
Okay, good.
I don't want to. No spoilers though. Like,
now I don't have to.
Well, now you guys don't have to go and read the book. He found it in this story.
It's all good. I'm over it. It's okay.
Because it's so. If I get burnt out, I have to travel all the way to freaking India to get it back, or just read your book.
No, I think you just read the book. Read the book. Yeah. See, there you go. Hey,
I'll be first in line.
I'm sure you talk about this in your book, but I want to confirm with you on air. Did you touch a king cobra?
So it's a complicated story. Yes is the answer. So I knew that snake charming was a part of Indian magic, but it didn't really occur to me until I was there that I would see it in person. And so I was sitting on this sort of patio, just doing magic for. So the way I traveled is. I discovered that magic was a very good way to make connections with people, in another culture, because you don't have to speak the same language to understand what's going on with magic. So you guys know the trick Crazy Man's Handcuffs. I bet I did that 4,000 times in my trip, because I just sit down on the curb and start, making these rubber bands pass through one another, and people would stop and watch and they'd see it and then they'd want to share that experience with someone else. So they'd haul you down the street to their brother's tea stand and you'd perform for the people who were there in line. And very quickly, you're no longer just a tourist, right? You find attachments to the culture, to the people that you meet. So I met this sort of pack of street kids, and they asked if I wanted to see a snake charmer. And, you don't go to India and then say no to something like that.
Right.
But I really didn't want to, because you guys know how I feel about snakes, right? I'm just terrified of them.
I think we feel the same way about snakes. They're yeah, don't put me. I don't know. I never touch them. I don't want to pictures with them. I don't. I don't want to think about them.
Yeah, but Nate is the kind of person that puts like your wife puts Post-it notes in National Geographic's covering up pictures of snakes, right? Yeah. So I mean, that level of scared of snakes.
On our honeymoon, I was flipping through a National Geographic on the airplane, and a picture of a snake surprised me, and I think I went something like, "Oh!" and jumped back.
All right. So a pack of street kids get you.
Yeah, and so they sort of were my ambassadors then with this snake charmer, and he had this, it was like a wicker basket, and he took the lid off, and these two just absurdly large snakes lift their heads up and rise up, and one of them was sort of scanning the crowd, but the other one locked eyes with me as if to say, "Listen, fucker, I'm stuck in this basket and it's your fault." And it was this sort of deep, almost genetic level fear that humans must have evolved, like that fear that comes from seeing a snake that knows you are within striking distance, right? Right. She owned that moment entirely. It just turned me to liquid. And so he starts playing his flute, and I had read all of the theories about snake charming on the internet, and people like to talk about the fact that snakes don't have ears, and they're instead captivated by the sight of the flute, in their eye line that keeps them sort of distracted. The snake wasn't paying any attention to the flute. She was just staring at me, right? And then she reached this moment where it was as if she had just had enough of this shit. And so she just decides to leave and starts firing herself out of the basket onto the sidewalk, and she wanted to escape to the river, which I thought was a great idea. Like, she should just go and get out of here. But the trouble was that I was between her and the river. And so she got out of the basket and sort of coiled herself down. And the snake charmer was still just playing, and I couldn't believe, why he wasn't stopping her. I didn't understand. And so she just came straight at me, and I ran away screaming. And, by this time a crowd had sort of built up to watch this silly American who was terrified of snakes. And when I sort of ran away, they all just started laughing as hard as you could imagine at this ridiculous person from the other side.
I feel like this is a really good therapy for getting unscared of snakes so far. No, this sounds terrible. It all sounds terrible.
I would have shit my pants.
Yeah, it was it was bad. Thanks for bringing it up, by the way.
So, did they ever get the snake back?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So he caught her by the tail and did this sort. So I didn't see the first part of this maneuver because I was running, I guess, or scooting. But when I turned around, he had wrangled her back into the basket, and it was all okay after that. But
did you touch it?
Yeah, so he was deeply concerned that I was so afraid. So he got one of the kids to translate, and we had this nice talk about his career, and he put the snakes back in the basket. And the thing that I learned was that in India, snake charmers, they're not primarily entertainers. So in Iowa we have squirrels, right? And the squirrels are just sort of out, and in your day you will see squirrels. Well, in this part of India, they just have a lot of cobras, and so a snake charmer's job is to sort of remove cobras from people's houses or from wherever they are, and take them out into the wild, or to keep them away from people.
They're like wardens.
Yeah, they're like sort of animal catchers. That same snake catcher had caught a cobra in the house across the street from my hotel. It was coiled up in the toilet.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Right.
Oh Jesus.
Oh my God. Now I'm going to look in every toilet I sit on for the next month to make sure there's not a cobra in there.
Yeah, that would be a bad night, wouldn't it?
So we caught one in the house across the street from the hotel?
Yeah, and he was so concerned that I was so afraid of them, he asked if I wanted to hold the cobra. And he said that he would hold its head, so I didn't have to worry about that. But he handed the body to me. And so I held it in my hands, and it was you could feel how strong she was, right? Like she was just one continuous muscle. But it was hot, and I was still sort of freaking out, and I think she could sense that I was uncomfortable, and that made her uncomfortable. Anyway, she just shit all over me. And so
shit on by a cobra. That's
right.
a fucking story.
So I didn't take that very well, if you can imagine. And so she jumped out of my hands into the snake charm, and anyway, yeah, that was the end of this. That was the end of my experience with that particular snake.
Oh my God. Ladies and gentlemen, buy this book. It comes out in January. We're going to have a Monday Club book club just to everyone finish this book at the same time. At the bottom of the podcast, wherever you subscribed, or on our face page, all of that stuff, we're going to have links so you can get in touch with Nate and definitely get this book. Nate. That's Nate Standerforth, ladies and gentlemen. Nate Standerforth.
You guys don't have to read the book. Just buy a bunch of copies. And
Done.
Every time I go into an airport bookstore, I'll buy one. And I'll mail it to a library somewhere.
That'd be great, Pete.
Oh my God, that was amazing, Nate. Okay, dude. So getting back into traditional Monday Club stuff, really quickly. Last week we had a challenge back and forth between Pete and I. That challenge was concerning this here McGregor Mayweather fight.
That was a bet.
Nate, did you watch this fight?
No, I didn't. I was doing a show, but I read about it afterwards.
Okay, Pete, did you watch the fight?
I watched the fight live. Yeah, not like there, but on a TV.
Okay. I was also doing a show. We finished the show. We drove back to our hotel, which is about 45 minutes away. The fight was supposed to have been over a long time ago, but it got delayed. We got out of our van. I was walking up to the front of the hotel, and there's a dude standing outside smoking a cigarette, watching the fight live on his cell phone. And so I ran over to him like a crazy person, carrying all my luggage, and was just like, "Hey, dude, you don't know me, but is the fight still on?" He's like, "Oh yeah, it's like the 10th round." I was like, "Sweet." So like I just huddled up next to this guy, this random like hillbilly guy, and watched the fight on his phone, and he was like super cool about it. And I saw the last 3 minutes of the fight, which is, all that matters in this situation. And let's just jump to it. You know who won that fight, Pete?
I do. It was Mr. Floyd Mayweather and his amazing boxing tactical skills.
Which is specifically what I said was going to happen, and specifically because of his amazing tactical skills. So,
Gus,
I just want to know. Who won that? Who won that bet?
Gus, you won. Gus, you were the best. Gus, I bow at your feet. Gus, I should never bet against you ever again. Gus, you are all-knowing and all-knowledgeable. Gus, you drink tequila like a man, like two men. You are that manly. You drink tequila. So manliness. That was a good pose. Gus, you win. I lost.
All right.
I lost. I went on McGregor, and Mayweather won. I thought Conor McGregor, he was going to be the wild card. He was going to come in and just shock the world by taking this time to really train how to box and become a boxer. But he didn't really become a boxer. He just kind of took his MMA style and stopped using his feet and all the other hits you're not allowed to use. And
were you hoping he'd get a kick in there?
Yeah, I was worried about that because then he would be disqualified, right? If he knocked him out with a foot or something. I really thought he was. I thought he was a really smart fighter and he was going to do that. But Mayweather was way smarter. He knew exactly what McGregor was going to do, which McGregor did. He came out and just did MMA style minus, he boxed more, but it was, he was a little wily. He got some hits in. He won the first 4 rounds, I thought, obviously. But, Mayweather was playing a little rope-a-dope on him. He was letting him punch himself out, and then he just started getting tired in the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and then the 10th. He was wobbling all over the place. And
they called it at the absolute right time. Yeah, so
I thought they called it a little early.
No, they called it at the right time.
Because this guy's used to getting his ass kicked in the ring and bloodied up and everything. He was barely punched.
Yeah, look, he didn't argue that they stopped it. You know why? Because he couldn't see straight anymore. Look, here's the point. The whole point of this entire fight. Sure, that was a pretty good spectacle. I think it was a good fight as far as boxing is concerned. But most importantly, their marketing team and advertising team for this fight was insane. Like, for the last few months, everyone has been talking about this fight. Like, if I had a marketing team that could get that word out and that much interest into any of the events or shows that I do, we'd all be millionaires, man. Like, each one of them made well over $100 million for this fight.
McGregor made 100. Mayweather made $350 million.
Yeah,
Wow.
Mayweather made enough.
There's a picture of him going around on the internet where Mayweather's in his private jet going home, and he's got his stack of hundreds all laid out in front of him on the table. And then there's a picture of McGregor with his stack of hundreds, the smaller stack of hundreds laid all in front of him, and they're just flying home on their private jets. They are very happy with each other, I'm sure.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure that there's no love lost there. Thank you for the biggest payday ever. Yeah, Mayweather just crossed into one of the top 3 highest paid athletes of all time. They've crossed over the $1 billion mark. $1 billion as a sports entertainer. That's insane.
That is insane. That is
Yeah,
crazy. So what do I owe you, Gus? What do I owe you?
You owe me, my friend, a picture posted onto the interwebs of you with the most amount of hair that you've ever had in your life. I want like 80s hair metal band levels of hair.
I don't think I've ever had that level of hair, though. I will find it. I bet it's in 6th or 7th grade.
Okay. I went ahead, even though I won the challenge, I happened to have found a picture of me from my 13 or 14-year-old self with a ginormous afro, and I went ahead and posted that anyway in honor of the hurricane victims. I was like, you guys might need a smile, so here you go. So that's what you have to challenge yourself next to, is my afro picture.
Nice. All right, well, I will post this by the time this comes out on Monday.
All right, my friend. Well, you know what that brings us to?
Hey, it's time for Stories from the Road. So I was on the road this week, and I went to Louisville, Kentucky, and I went to a place you remember, I'm sure, Gus. It is a place we had breakfast a year or 2 ago at a conference, and they had the most amazing breakfast foods ever. And one thing in particular, they had the best cinnamon bun we've ever tasted in our entire lives. Do you remember that place?
Of course I remember that place. What was the name of the place?
Wild Eggs in Louisville, Kentucky.
Wild Eggs in Louisville, Kentucky has an order of cinnamon rolls that, I kid you not, without embellishment or hyperbole, made James tear up when he had some.
Yes.
He ate it and like a little tiny tear trickled down his face. It was so good.
Oh, man, this place is amazing. I had their wild eggs Benny, which is mushrooms and eggs Benedict with a balsamic reduction or something. It was amazing. And then I had a cinnamon bun, and I freaking ate the entire thing. Yeah, I ate the entire thing of the entire cinnamon bun and my eggs Benedict. And last time I had a cinnamon bun there, I remember I was so in love with it as well that you guys gave me the leftovers, and the leftovers are the deliciousness at the bottom of the skillet. It's made in a skillet, and you scrape up all the cinnamon and sugar and last bits of the glaze that was on top. And I was scraping that skillet so good, and I scooped up a big, nice very last spoonful of this stuff, and I'm just holding it inches from my face, enjoying the anticipation of this, the ecstasy that's to follow. And as soon as I start to go close to my mouth, Dan Martin grabs the spoon from me and shoves it into his mouth and steals my freaking spoonful of amazing icing and cinnamon. And I was so pissed. That almost ended our friendship. That's how pissed I was.
Now, to be fair, right afterwards we ordered another round of cinnamon rolls because that's how good they were. So it made up for it. But I'll never forget that. That was friend level testing of jackassery right there.
I mean, people have punched me in the arm in a friendship fight, and I've never gotten this pissed. I mean, there has been things where you think, man, that guy's never going to be Peter's friend again. I've forgiven a lot of shit. This almost was not forgivable.
Look, they are that good. They really are that good. If in a fire, if I had to choose between my kid and those cinnamon rolls, I mean, I would always choose my kid. But I'd still be thinking about the cinnamon rolls. You know? I mean, they really are that good.
Yeah, so those cinnamon buns. If you ever go to Louisville, Wild Eggs, amazing breakfast.
Wow.
Yeah, they really are that good. Nate.
Gus. Yeah.
I have a challenge for you. I know that we've been talking a lot about your book and all of that stuff. There was a story that you told me one time that I want to see if you'll relay on the air. It's a story that involves you yelling a cuss word really loud to an audience. Do you know what story I'm talking about?
Well, I would like to say that has only happened one time, but
yeah, it's your stepping on a nail story.
Yeah. So anyone who's familiar with magic knows the needle mystery, where you swallow, a number of needles and you swallow the length of thread, and when you regurgitate the thread, magically the needles have threaded themselves on the length of thread, right? Houdini got it. That's where I think everyone learned it because he used to do it. I have performed this trick for a decade without incident, without problem at all, because anyone who performs it sort of learns the safe way to handle themselves when they do it, and it looks dangerous, but you find your way around that very quickly. But I was on stage in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, at Coe College, and at the beginning of the trick, so if you put yourself in the mind of the audience, the obvious solution is that they're not real needles, or maybe you've taken real needles and filed them down so they're not sharp. So I always start by handing the needles out for inspection. And as I did that, one of the needles fell from the package and landed on the carpet. And I just ignored it because I thought, no problem. I've got a whole package of needles. I'm just going to move on. What I didn't know is that needle tumbled through the air and then landed, pointy end, sticking straight up in the carpet. And it just waited there like a snake in the grass, right? And if I had a bucket of needles and just tried to drop them over and over and over again, there's no way I could get that needle to land the way it landed and stick in the carpet in just that way, right? It was impossible. Like, that was an actual miracle. But there I am, walking around, in front of the stage, and there's a needle pointing straight up. So I get through the whole... God, it was just so bad. I get through the whole performance. I swallow all the needles. I swallow the thread. I bring the thread back out of my mouth. And there are all the needles threaded along. And everyone claps. And then I step backwards.
Oh, my God.
The needle is about... maybe an inch and 3/4, not quite 2 inches long. The sole on my shoe is about half an inch thick. And it drives straight through. It goes straight through the bottom. Like, I just stepped down on it perfectly. And it went straight through the bottom of my shoe. And instantly, like, there's this searing pain in my foot. And I look down, like, I look at the bottom of my shoe, and all I can see is this silver circle, right? But I know instantly what's happened. Like, it went all the way in, but I can still see the bottom of the needle. And so without even thinking, I just shout, "Fuck! There's a needle going through my foot." So, like, that's funny now, but put yourself in the position. Put yourself in the position of the audience, who has just seen me successfully complete this illusion, and then I scream at the end of it that there's a needle going through my foot. So,
like, how did a needle go to your foot? Travel down your esophagus, down a leg, and into your heel.
Yeah, it's like it was a hidden secret trick there at the end, like a transposition or something.
Yeah.
But the trouble, so I was in serious trouble because what do you do? Like, the obvious solution would be to take your shoe off, but just the physics of that don't work because the needle is so far into my foot that I can't just slip the shoe off. It's like it's stuck itself. The needle has sort of stuck my shoe onto my foot. So the only option would be to unlace the shoe in front of everyone and stop the show and get it off. And I wasn't, prepared to do that. And so I finished the show with this needle just sort of, it was bad. Like, we've all had moments on stage where we think, I wonder if it can get worse than this. And yeah, it can.
That sounds terrible. How much more of your show did you have left?
I don't remember, Pete. I don't remember.
You were in shock.
I'm gonna guess that you have never finished your show faster than that. You're like, there's the next one, and done, and here's the next one, and done.
Yeah, it was just absurd. Like, and as I was performing, I was sort of marveling at how impossible this injury was. Because it was just the perfect storm of a number of things happening. Because if the needle had fallen just a little bit differently, it wouldn't have lodged in the carpet. And had I stepped on it a little bit differently, it wouldn't have, had the force to go up through my shoe. So
yeah, if it
you
was just
horseshoed yourself,
angled,
right,
you'd have been fine.
God.
I love how we're focusing on all the most awful moments of my stage career. I see how this works, guys.
No, we started you off with a good intro, and then
that's true. That was a very gracious introduction. That's right.
I have a question about the needle trick in itself that we're just glossing over. So you hand each needle out for inspection, and then you put them in your mouth?
Yeah, there are some sanitary concerns with that, but yeah, I'm still here.
You have an incredible immune system because of it.
That's right.
I guess so. I mean, I like to think people aren't testing them for sharpness by running them through their fingers and licking them, but...
Now, that's an amazing story, but Nate, I have to ask you, you don't have to tell it if you don't want to, but my favorite story of yours is this one that involves a light bulb. Are you willing
Pete,
to tell
come on,
this?
Man.
You don't have to. You don't have to.
Okay, I will make this very brief.
Oh no, this is one to just kind of bask in.
Do we have time? Do we have time for one more?
Yeah,
You have
sure.
time.
Nobody listens. That's fine.
Okay. If you need to cut this out of length considerations or mercy considerations, I understand.
This will be an extra long one. If you have time, we have time. It's your call.
When I was 17 years old, I did a big show in my high school auditorium. And I grew up in Ames, Iowa. And it was a great place to grow up because when you did a show, like, that was the thing that was going on that night. So we sold it out. We sold out 2 nights of the 600-seat show. And my friends were there, like parents, girls from school I was trying to impress. Like, everyone in my world came out that night to see this show. And I delivered... It was a 90-minute show, and right in the middle, I delivered this impassioned sort of ode to the great Harry Blackstone and talked about his floating light bulb trick, right? And I gave the history and why it was so important to me personally, and then everyone looks in their program and, it's time for Nate to do the floating light bulb trick. So the curtains open on a stage that is just bathed in fog and blue light. And Bryan Adams' Everything I Do It For You is just throbbing from the speakers, right? And I'm wearing a tuxedo, and I do my little dance number to start it off. And then so I can tell you the method because it was terrible, and I invented it on my own. It was the least practical method you can imagine. It was this absurdly dysfunctional family of threads and pulleys up in the fly system of the theater that were controlled by my friend John with 2, like a marionette set up in the wings. And so I would stand on stage and wave my hands about, and John would manipulate these threads to make the light bulb float around. And it was a self-lighting light bulb. So really all I had to do was take credit for it, and John would do the whole thing. My only job was to covertly attach the light bulb with a hook to this set of threads, right? So I danced over to the spot. I had my little mark on the stage, and I had this sort of choreography move where I'd reach up and engage the thread that was hanging just where it was supposed to be, and I couldn't find it. And I thought, oh shit, and I couldn't find it again. And so very, very quickly, like any effort at being graceful as I sort of dance my way into this setup turns into me just like reaching up into the air trying to find this thread that the audience can't see so I can attach it to my light bulb, because at least I can then get through the trick, whether or not the introduction looks nice. So finally I reach up and I feel it and I grab it and I pull it down, and by that point I'm sort of nervous, and filled with fear because it's not going the way I wanted to. And so as I was attaching the self-lighting light bulb to the thread, I broke the thread. And instantly, I feel the tension, the thread just flies up into the rafters. There's no way that this light bulb is ever going to float. And the only people who know it are myself and my friend John, who suddenly feels that he has no play in the lines, and he looks at me like, what the fuck am I supposed to do now? But the music is still going. The sound booth doesn't know what's going on. The audience heard me introduce the floating light bulb. They're expecting this thing to float, and there's no way it's going to float. And so because I was 17, and I just didn't have enough stage time to know how to get out of this gracefully, the only explanation, or the only way out I could imagine, was to improvise an interpretive dance on the spot. And so, like, I was frantically remembering every bit of choreography from every David Copperfield special I had ever seen. Just like me and the light bulb twirling and sashaying and dipping and gliding. And I was making the light bulb turn on and then turn off again, and sort of looking at it longingly. And then it went on. It went on for a long, long time. And the audience just sort of sat there, at first sort of curious, and then disbelieving, and then just aghast as they realized that something had gone wrong. And they all just sort of, we endured this together. And then mercifully the sound booth figured out something was wrong, and they faded down the music. But it was, I have drawn a tremendous amount of power from that disaster, because I still walk on stage and think, well, this is bad, but it's not that bad.
Oh man, thank you so much for that story. Oh man, I don't.
You guys are hitting the greatest hits of disaster.
I was laughing the entire time. I had to step away from the mic.
But like,
you give me that's so, because oh man, it's hilarious. But like you said, it doesn't get any worse than that. So whenever you go on stage, you're like, the worst has already happened, right?
It's the worst feeling in magic, and I'm sure everyone can relate to this. Like that moment when the magician knows that something is not going to work, but the audience doesn't yet know. And you frantically, how am I going to solve this problem? And sometimes you come up with something, and sometimes you just think, oh shit, this ship is going down.
I'll just interpretive dance my way out of it.
Yep.
I'll never watch Napoleon Dynamite the same way. I'll always think of that scene and just imagine a floating light bulb.
Yeah, because you can imagine a floating light bulb, or like a self-lighting light bulb, would not have improved that dance for him.
No, not at all. Well, Nate, we thank you for sharing all of these delicious stories. The only reason why we're letting Nate tell all of his most haunting moments in performing is because he's such a superstar. That brings us to, let's go ahead and jump right back into this week's Teachable Moments. Let's do it.
Teachable moments. Boom. So my teachable moment for this week is stand while you podcast. the last 2 or 3 podcasts, I don't know if you've noticed this, listeners, but I've been standing the entire time, and it's wonderful. I like standing. I feel more confident. I feel more energetic. I can bounce. I can move. I stand. It feels great. So if you ever have to talk on the mic for whatever reason, if people aren't watching and you're not required to be sitting, I say stand up. It feels good.
We all feel talked down to, but that's cool.
You guys are my podcast minions.
Nate, do you have a teachable moment you want to share with everybody?
I do, yeah. This is something that I learned in the past, but I used this week. I was at a show, and I finished really late, and it was in a small town, and all the restaurants were closed. But I've just made a habit of, in my suitcase, carrying 1 package of freeze-dried backpacking food for like an emergency dinner. If you want to have dinner and you don't want to eat it out of the vending machines. Advances in freeze-dried technology have come so far. For $8 you can get, really, they say hunger is the best spice, so I think that probably helps. But yeah, you can get great food. Mountain House is my favorite brand, and you can keep it in that front part of your suitcase that you never use anyway, and it's great. Yeah, I had sweet and sour pork, and you just heat the water up in your hotel coffee maker, and then you add it to the bag and you let it sit. It's delicious.
Is that the brand's motto? Their tagline?
Hunger is the best spice.
Right. Yeah, we're better than nothing.
Is that like a MRE, the whole military thing? Meals ready to eat, freeze dried. I think, and it heats
I'm
up
not
itself.
familiar with those.
Does it have the
No, you need
elements?
to provide hot water.
Okay.
No, so yeah, but you just use the hotel coffee maker, and
it's like gourmet ramen.
Nice.
Yeah, it is. Right. It's but I might be strange in this way, but I love it. Like, I would just eat it because it's there. Like, I think it's incredible. But
Well, I tell you what, that's some good advice, because I have definitely survived off of vending machine Oreo cookies before, because there's nothing open in a 50-mile radius of me when I'm done with the show.
Right. So here's the thing that I will just add, though, that I did learn this week. You also have to, with that bag of freeze-dried food, also remember to bring a spoon, because I definitely was eating like handfuls of sweet and sour pork.
That's awesome. All right, my teachable moment this week is simply this, guys. We've talked about at the top of the podcast that the flood that affected the Houston area, it was the worst that this country has ever seen as far as flooding is concerned. It's the 500-year high. And I just want to say that, guys, just go out there and be good humans. Try to remember that it's just as likely that you could have been in that same situation. There's lots of people who have lost everything that they have. So there's lots of places that you can donate. We sort of hyped it at the beginning of the show, but I'll say it again. If you text the short code 9099, it texts the word Red Cross to 9099. It'll automatically add $10 to your cell phone bill, and that money will go directly to the Red Cross. $10 is what? A cup of coffee and some oatmeal at Starbucks? Like, if you can change that and have it go directly to people who are trying to help give cots and blankets and underwear to those who lost everything, please do. Also, we'll share a link of this on the face page as well, but CJ Johnson set up an organization to help with the disaster relief. The organization is Boots on the Ground. They are a nonprofit 501c3, so any donation that you give, you can definitely take off of your taxes. I know that's not why people donate, but it still is a little extra help for everybody. Boots on the Ground, we helped them purchase a boat and a motor today. They are getting in the streets, taking that boat that can hold 10 people and going around and getting people out of their homes and to shelters and helping rescue people. Your money will go directly to a good cause and to saving lives. So that's my teachable moment.
That's a good one. Help people. Awesome. Nate, thank you so much for being part of Monday Club, man. It is amazing to see you. We have to make up an excuse. We should have Nate more often so we can hang out and see him.
Yeah, done.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. It's good to see both of you.
Dude, and way to not be invisible on this one, Nate. Way to step up, man.
You got at least 1,000 words, I think.
Guys, we'll put all of Nate's stuff on all of our information. And again, everyone, thanks for being part of Monday Club. We'll see you next Monday. Oh my goodness, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to Monday Club. Hey, grab a friend. Tell them they have to listen to Monday Club Podcast. You can do it at mondayclubpodcast.com, facebook.com/Monday Club Podcast, Twitter at Monday Club Pod, Instagram at Monday Club Podcast. Email us at mondayclubpodcast@gmail.com. That's also our PayPal, so if you want to buy us a drink and get a shout out, that's the way to do it. Super thanks to international superstar Nate Staniforth. Check him out at natestaniforth.com. We'll also have his information posted on our thing. Go out and buy that book. Also, a special shout out to Mr. James Caldwell, working exceptionally hard on this episode as our sound engineer, and our music, as always, by Mr. Zach Holder. See you next week.
I think our show title should be Nate Gets Pooped On by a Cobra.